Hey gang, it's Squill, and throughout the later seasons of Adventure Time, the show began experimenting with its format, giving us 8-episode miniseries in the form of Stakes in Season 7, Islands in Season 8, and Elements in Season 9. This experimentation opened the door for more longer-form stories after the show was cancelled, with the 45-minute Distant Land specials, and the Fiona and Cake spin-off, which is structured similar to the miniseries but with a longer runtime. I look back at these miniseries quite fondly. It was really exciting being an Adventure Time fan as these were airing. They contributed a lot to me falling back in love with the show when it lost me a little during Season 6. So I thought it'd be fun to look back on this era of the show and rank its episodes, starting with Stakes. Stakes is admittedly my least favorite of the 3 miniseries, which is totally not an opinion I'm worried about the entire Adventure Time fandom crucifying me for. But don't worry, as I still quite like Stakes. It has a fun, spooky atmosphere, a good character journey for Marceline, and some awesome new vampire characters. I do have a few issues with Stakes, but I'll get into those more as we start talking about the individual episodes. This is every Adventure Time Stakes episode ranked. At number 8, we have Checkmate. Checkmate is by no means a bad episode, but it's the one from this miniseries that just doesn't quite sit right with me. It feels like a lot of the momentum built up in the previous episodes is halted for some awkward character interactions, a passive villain, and fart jokes. The VK not wanting to be a vampire anymore is interesting conceptually, but in execution feels a little unsatisfying. After 3 episodes of vampire hunting, it's a little lame for the big bad to be this pathetic. I think this character turn could have worked for me if we actually saw the Vampire King come to this decision. But seeing as he's been absent for the last 3 episodes, the bulk of his arc happens off-screen. But thankfully, there's still a lot of stuff I quite like here. There's some nice character moments near the beginning of the episode, some good jokes, an ending that feels intense and does a great job setting up the finale, and Peppa being gay as hell for the Vampire King. So yeah, still a good episode, just my least favorite of this bunch. At number 7, we have Marceline the Vampire Queen. Stakes' first episode does a good job setting up the miniseries. There's a good amount of weight put on Marceline's decision here, to stick to the status quo and remain a vampire, or to take a risk and remove her vampirism. That opening scene with the umbrella is extremely effective in communicating how hard it must be to live life as a vampire. But while the episode itself does a good job setting up Marceline's arc, I can't help but feel like it sorta comes out of nowhere. Like, at no point before this episode did I really get the vibe that Marcy didn't like being a vampire. Which isn't to say that I don't like Marcy's arc in Stakes, it's just not as impactful to me as, say, Obsidian, where her insecurities directly stem from her self-worth and abandonment issues, as seen in the original show. I suppose this is more of an issue with Stakes as a whole than this episode specifically, but seeing as this episode was meant to set up Marceline's arc, this is where I felt this criticism was most appropriate. But all that being said, this is still a good episode, and a strong start to the miniseries. At number 6, we have Vamps About. The main goal of Vamps About is to set up this gang of vampires that gets defeated one by one throughout the next few episodes. We get some fun banter between the Vamps, making them all memorable characters for what little screen time they get. I think it's a pretty fun twist that none of the Vamps can agree on what they want to do, and now that they're back. We also get a pretty cool flashback sequence in this episode where we see Marcy's first encounter with the Vampire King. The shot of the VK biting Marcy is so evocative. It does such a great job making you feel like Marcy is being violated in this moment. Definitely the best part of the episode, and it makes Marcy's present-day confrontation with the Vampire King at the end of the episode feel more personal, as her trauma from being forced into vampirehood is clearly clouding her judgment. My one criticism of this episode, though, is that the sketch artist gag does drag on quite a bit, taking up almost a full minute of the episode, which breaks the tension a little bit in my opinion. And in general, it is one of the less exciting episodes of Stakes. But that's okay, as it still does everything it needs to quite well. At number 5, we have The Dark Cloud. The Dark Cloud's strengths definitely put it above the previous 3 episodes, but I have some issues with it as a finale. For one, I don't like PB getting her kingdom back at the end of the episode. I don't mind the citizens standing up to King Vu and helping peoples out, but considering the fact that this is primarily Marceline's story, it feels weird to wrap up PB's arc here too. Plus, King Vu is just a really funny character who I wish got more screen time. Also, while I don't mind Marceline becoming a vampire again at the end of the episode, I do wish it was more of an active choice on her part, rather than an accident. But what this episode lacks in terms of satisfying resolutions, it makes up for in sheer scale. I love the design of the titular Dark Cloud. I love how we see a bunch of village people and cows inside of it. It feels like such a big, imposing threat, and it's cool seeing other kingdoms come in to help. And I like Marceline's little character journey in this one too. That moment between her and Ice King is easily the best part of the episode. I love how Simon is the one who inspires Marceline to keep fighting, even if accidentally. And while I have some issues with the ending, I can't deny that this reprise of Everything Stays is the perfect way to wrap up the miniseries. The Dark Cloud is definitely not a perfect finale, but it's a good one. I quite like it. At number 4, we have Take Her Back. Alright, here's where we get into the really good episodes of Stakes. I love Finn and Jake's misunderstanding in Take Her Back. It is so funny. The shot of Finn repeatedly staking the moon kills me every time. Some people don't like the way Finn and Jake are used in Stakes, but I never really took issue with it. They work well as comic relief. I love just how creepy the moon is here. Between her voice and the way she can just control people with her mind, it's super freaky. I like the PB side to this episode too, her trying desperately to heal Marcy. And there's some fun banter between her, Peppa, and the banana guards. Marcy's dream sequences in this episode are both very interesting too. The first one showing her visit in old Simon and Betty. I like the implication that Simon probably told Marceline stories about Betty, causing her to put that relationship on a pedestal in her mind, similar to what Simon himself was doing. I like her second dream too, about her growing older while PB stays young. Great callback to PB's line about one day having to bury Marcy in the ground in Marceline the Vampire Queen. Take Her Back is a great comedic episode, while also being probably the spookiest episode of the miniseries. At number 3, we have The Empress Eyes. It's an Ice King episode, so y'all know it was gonna rank high on here. I like the implied history to the Ice King and the Empress's relationship. That at one point, Simon was loyal to the Empress just like Ice King is. And I love the twist that Ice King was never hypnotized to begin with, just very horny. I like how much Ice King being here complicates things for Marcy. It adds a good personal angle to the story, where she wants to protect him despite the chaos that he brings to her life. I like Marceline's little memories poem in this episode too, showing how isolated she was without Simon. The show does a good job treating the Ice King sympathetically here, while not losing the comedic side to him. The Empress herself is a very fun character with a cool design. Her cold and closed-off personality contrasts beautifully against the highly emotional Ice King. Also, this outside clock bit is really stupid and doesn't really add anything to the story, but I also find it very funny. Great boarding on Jake here. The Empress Eyes is yet another fantastic Simon and Marceline episode. At number 2, we have May I Come In. May I Come In is such a chaotic episode. I love it. This one is filled with characters just scrambling around, trying desperately to get the drop on the Hierophant. I really like how much our group feels like a team in this episode, with pretty much everyone getting something to do. The Hierophant himself is easily my favorite of the vampires in Stakes. Love his dedication to old-school vampire rules, very funny, as well as his shape-shifting powers, making for some cool visuals with all the different forms he takes. I also quite like the way this episode pays off Jake's arc throughout Stakes. Jake shape-shifting into a house that the Hierophant can't enter is a very creative solution. I like seeing him face his fears here. I like the way this episode uses its secondary characters too. We get some good King Vu and Crunchy stuff, LSP gets to join in, and Peppa gets to warn again about the Hierophant. And all these characters coming together makes for what is easily the funniest episode of the miniseries. I love Finn being used as bait here, it's so damn good. May I Come In is just a really fun episode, for sure the most entertaining of the miniseries. And at number 1, we have Everything Stays. A pretty obvious choice for number 1. Everything Stays is one of Adventure Time's most beloved episodes, and for good reason. I really love the vignette format this episode takes, giving us a wider view of Marceline's overall life. It stands out from an episode like Simon and Marcy that just shows us a day in young Marceline's life. Instead, this episode gives us a series of moments that define who Marceline is today. Obviously, my favorite moment in the episode is the Simon and Marcy moment. I really wish we got to see more of this era in Simon's life, where he was constantly switching back and forth between Simon and Ice King. Love this Holly Jolly Secrets callback. But on top of just being a cool moment, I also think the scene's placement in the episode is extremely clever, as Simon's relationship with Marcy directly parallels Marcy's relationship with this group of humans. She protects them from monsters, just like Simon would protect her. She sings like Simon would. She goofs around with them like Simon. And just like Simon abandons her, Marcy is forced to abandon the humans. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Two Bread Tom bears a striking resemblance to Simon. And on top of all that great character stuff, we get some cool lore reveals. We see Marcy's mom for the first time, we see why the humans left, the purpose and origin of the animal hats, and how Marcy got her vampire abilities. She is basically Kirby. Everything Stays is a fantastic episode. Definitely one of the strongest of Adventure Time's 7th season. And that was my stakes ranking. Let me know how you'd rank these episodes in the comments. I'm very excited to cover islands and elements in this format sometime next year. Easily my favorite stretch of episodes in the series. Hopefully I can get to them before Fiona and Cake Season 2 comes out. Have a good one, and Squill out.